Yeah, let's test mic test 1 2. I'm sure you can hear me. Is it open? Is it? It's open from our side, so I'm sure you should be able to hear us from your side. I'm on the podium. You can hear me. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Sure. You can just talk to Bruno and to pass it on to multi-choice.
works, but hello, hello. I don't know if that will work. Oh, it does. Okay, it gives sound there. Is this me coming through here? Okay, then that should be okay. If you say that's me. Let's check. See, it is buzzy.
Is it buzzy?
Listen to buzzy. I know you guys make the buzzy sound. But okay. It's not the end of the world. I'll try to. You see? Buzzy, 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 buzzy. Parliament
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. What do you call these things? A hard hat. Or not helmet. Eh? Makarapa. Yeah, I'm smiling. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Just to outline the process that we are going to follow. It's important that I put this because so that we demonstrate the seriousness with which we take this construction business. So what's going to happen is that, because as you will know, it's quite a very busy day in Parliament. There are two houses that are sitting, the National Assembly and National Council of Provinces. These are the last sittings, not the most final, but I think, as you will know, because of the elections, we are moving towards the conclusion of the business of Parliament. So there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. So, but there's also a lot of information that we want to share with you today regarding the update, regarding the construction of Parliament. And today is quite a very important day because it's a day that the presiding officers of Parliament, the acting speaker, and the chairperson of the NCOP are officially handing over the site that was damaged by the fire in 2022 to the contractors. So what is going to happen is that because of the limited time that the presiding officers have with us here, they are not going to be able to sit with us for the time that we have budgeted in order to give you the information. So we are going to start first with assembling on the steps of the National Assembly outside there, where there will be a brief symbolic handover by the presiding officers to the contractors. I'm sure you will have seen a crane that is parked outside, so it demonstrates the beginning of something, and that is what that is a message that we want to communicate first, and then it won't take long, and then we will come back here, where then the Secretary to Parliament will then present the update with regard to the rebuilding project. And of course, there are updated designs regarding how the building will look. You will be taken through that visual, and I must say that is quite a visually pleasing presentation that you will see how the new National Assembly that represents our democracy will look like. And then, of course, there will be other, we will unveil the new website also. All these things, I think, it will take about 40 minutes of the briefing once we come back. So for now, I'm asking that we go and assemble at the steps of the National Assembly there by the bust of Madiba, and then we'll start there, and then we will come back here. We'll just have a brief session there and come back here. And then, of course, we are going to conclude later after the briefing here by going inside to take you on a guided tour of, I know that we've never allowed the media inside, and anyone else by that, for that matter, inside the damaged building. So just to show you the work that has already happened, how it looks like before the actual construction starts. Thank you very much, colleagues. Can we make our way to the steps of the assembly?
Zuma. Yeah. No, I'm not doing that.
Are you going inside?
Never. Let's go. No, it's not there. Yeah. There's an end over.
Okay, sir.
Is this ours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laptop ke magere o
Cable guy.
Zoom.
Eh?
Agere o connector. Ba the cable ya.
Yeah, connect the call.
Or join a meeting on Zoom, and then you'll be showing there. There's no connectivity. You're on Zoom. I want a hardcore.
Almost had a big fight and still before later today. There will be signs. You don't want to greet me and I want to be in the event.
it's
Wena ya no
going. I think it is the same. Okay. Thank you very much. We are now beginning with the second leg of this media briefing. As I said earlier, that it has got several legs. After this, it will be the third leg to a tour of the inside of the building. I'm going to, at this point, to ask the Secretary to Parliament, and particularly the George, to give a presentation. So it's quite a different way of doing things. He's going to be presenting, going through a PowerPoint presentation. And thereafter, we will have another presenter for a few minutes of the technical aspects of it, and then take you through the new website dedicated to this project. And thereafter, we will go outside. Thank you very much, Secretary.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. And good afternoon to the presiding officers of Parliament. This is the most important day in the history of our Parliament as an institution. And consistent with the various briefings and undertakings made by the Executive Authority of Parliament, leading up to have just witnessed this afternoon, it's now putting concretely a lot of work that has happened from the 2nd of January 2022, when the fire engulfed the buildings of Parliament. And today marks that historical concretization of when and what will start and what is in the store to be done. So we're quite excited as Parliament to outline to you the work that would unfold as we go forward, starting from tomorrow, the 10th of May. Many of you will recall the building of Parliament, that it's comprised of about 10 buildings, what we normally call precinct of Parliament. It's 10 buildings. And the one that was affected by fire is the National Assembly, new wing, as well as the old wing. But undoubtedly, the impact has been felt across all the related buildings, especially the impact on the space functionality of the institution, the disruption of offices of members, and the work that had to be undertaken starting from that process. We will also recall that because of its historical significance, Parliament was declared in 2014 as a national heritage point in terms of the National Heritage Act of 2014. So there's quite a lot of issue other than the brick and mortar that needs to be rebuilt. There's scientific significance of the building of Parliament. There's social value, political value of the meaning of that institution, a bastion of democracy and accountability in our country. Essentially, the epitome of our democracy is represented in Parliament. And that on its own is a very rare representation of what the meaning of Parliament is. We know that the old Assembly was built as an extension to the old Parliament. The old Parliament was built, for those who may not know, in 1885. So in 1985, 100 years. Then add there, you're talking about 139 years of value that is contained in that historical building. And that is what we now call the National Council of Provinces in today's words. And the designers of the building were the architect Baker and Kendall. And the House of Assembly was meeting there until 1988, as you would know, leading to the completion of the National Assembly building. We know the history of the building. I don't have to bear you on that. It reflects the historical past pre-1994 as a tricameral parliament, and ushered in 1994 a democratic parliament that utilized those buildings. So we have a huge, rich heritage that is contained there, hence the informants of our design approach, that it is about reconstruction and restoration. So the design concepts that you would see today unfolding represent that strand, managing the tension between restoration work, which is underpinned by the heritage legislation that requires that any building of a social value, political value, scientific value, and all of those must be preserved, and where it is damaged must be restored. So any reference you see to the language of restoration speaks of that. Yet the same buildings we had of that same value also presented constraining factors to the functionality of a post-democratic parliament. A 1994 parliament that reflects a National Assembly of 400 members, that hitherto was a tricameral parliament of a lesser number of members. So already from the beginning, you had a constrained environment. You also have a National Council of Provinces that houses about 90 members, plus 10 representing the local sphere of government. So many of you will recall during SONA that there will always be movement of chairs from this building to that building to try and augment space requirements, including a small public gallery. So when we have all those factors, you deal with what laws have been passed in Parliament, including OHASA laws, occupational health constraints, with ordinarily a historical building will present with those two tensions. How do you make sure passages are adequate if you were to respond on a disaster? And the passages at that time would have been designed in a particular way. So the restoration and refurbishment speaks to those two contending tensions that had to be managed to give rise to what the design concepts have to be burdened with: restore and modernize. And that's what will be unveiled today. Many of you will recall the post-fire incident, the aftermath, the most devastating impact that required millions, not just millions, mega millions of water to be pumped in to suppress the fire. And when the report of the fire was done by July in 2022, it even measured the impact, the terabytes impact of the fire that was raging there, that it had to take that long for the city fire department to suppress the fire, resulting into millions of liters of water that flooded. Just imagine then on the historical artifacts, the impact on the offices, impact on historical material that is contained in a parliament of almost 140 years. Many of you will recall this when we took the tour from July last year. In short, many questions get asked. It is almost 18 months now. Nothing is happening and so on. To the contrary, a lot of work has been happening for this entire period from January 2022 up to now. The first 6 months, many of us will recall that that site, right from the 2nd of January, was declared a crime scene where the national multi-pronged investigating authority of our country was in charge of the site. The specialized investigation unit, the Hawks, the police, the security services declared the site as a non-accessible site. So they deal with the criminal investigation aspect of the site until the site was officially handed over to Parliament in July 2023. At that time, a report done by Public Works was also completed and handed over to Parliament to be able to say This is the preliminary assessment we have done on the damage, where they appointed Kucha Development Agency, an agents of the state that assisted the department to carry out what they envisage as preliminary assessment both for the old building and the new assembly, and gave us estimates of the impact of the work that needed to be done. And based on that work, many of you would recall that in terms of the determination of the work that has been done, it then culminated into the presiding officers of Parliament, after being briefed with that, the chairperson and the speaker, meeting with the executive authority of the National Treasury, the Minister of Finance, to make a presentation on a case that there must be funding allocated for the reconstruction of Parliament. And in the medium-term budget policy statement of 27 October last year, an amount of 2 billion rand was then appropriated. Not the cost to build the new Parliament, but appropriation to start the work. And as we all know, that work was then divided into various work packages, which you now see on your screen. Work package number 1, work package number 2, work package number 3, and so on. Each of the work packages has got different stages which needs to be undertaken properly in managing a building of a historical significance and national key point. So you would have seen early works that we presented in the Joint Standing Committee, that we presented to the Chief Whips Forum, we presented to houses in terms of the chairpersons and so on. And the second work package involved the restoration of the old and new assembly. We also had to deal with the reality that the master plan of parliaments needs to be developed to look at the functionality of 10 buildings, plus the surrounding precinct. How do we make this space to be functionally integrated? How do you optimize the space design of Parliament that otherwise has always been a combination of this alteration, addition of this, without looking at interconnecting space utility of an institution? And that has been part of the work package number 3, in that let's also take this opportunity to develop a proper master plan. The fourth one is about facilities management. How do we manage facilities of Parliament so that if we have to do subsequent phases of upgrades, we speak about the National Council of Provinces that is as old as 139 years, how do you make sure that in your timely work that must be done there, or in the Marx building, how do you fix things in the Marx building so that we create functionality? So all of these speaks to integrated work that has been outlined and shared for this period. So a lot of work also has to respond to procedural dimensions of the very same projects. Compliance with bodies like your heritage agencies, where you must get permits for everything. So we were to create a multi-pronged conversational point of key stakeholders, starting with the City of Cape Town as the approval authority of any rezoning, development applications, and approval and so on. Deal with the National Heritage Council, so that if you have to ask for clearance of debris, you know that all of those things are done in a specialized manner. As we do so, we also have to comply with laws of assets of Parliament, which all of us, you would know, there's always annual auditing of any institutions of the state. So assets are very important to be determined their value, pre-fire book value, and book value, if any, and those that can be salvaged, to be salvaged, and to do so, comply with special permits of assets of historical value. All of those things added to the time management outline that otherwise would not have been envisaged without that work. So one has to strike a delicate balance between managing execution, at the same time not compromising compliance with laws and regulations of our country. That also required us to deal with the reality that members don't have offices, members don't have committee rooms, and we had about 155 offices that were brought down, and an additional 54 offices. So in total, we had about 200 and about 10 offices that we needed for members, whilst we are talking about phases for the restoration. So the greatest part of our energy last year was consumed by providing offices of members of parliament. And we are glad that as at end of July last year, simultaneously, we completed 155 offices for members. Contrary to say nothing is happening in parliament, 155 offices have been provided to members and additional boardrooms. We are now busy as we speak to work on the additional 54 offices that we envisage to complete by July. So at the 7th parliament, when members start, no member of parliament would say we do not have offices. And that requires to be done parallel to the actual reason that brought all of us here today around the work. And we're now busy with identifying additional floors in the 90 Plain Street, starting from the floors number 8 up to floors number 14 to accommodate those additional offices for members. And this is the work we have to do under asset collection, asset classification, asset tagging. And all of that work was meant to be undertaken between May and July. And that work was undertaken, save for areas where they were declared as red zoned areas. And red zone meaning that structural engineers would have gone to the building and declared an area that it is inaccessible from a safety point of view. And they left telling instructions that only through guided tour of a structural engineer permit. So they had to first demarcate zones to identify where certain areas can be accessible, and to date those areas remain unacceptable and inaccessible except through guided technical tours like we will have today. So library books that we have also, a number of items that we had to collect and gather, and all of that work took its own time to be completed before we can talk about demolition and razing, so that we balance the historical requirements of legislation. The 4th and 5th floor, members of the media will be available to see those very nicely designed offices that were to creatively do reconfiguration of the 4th and 5th floor. And those offices, you see them on the images, speak to the modernizing aspect of our work for members of parliament, and we'll do that for the entire building, including up to max building refurbishment, and also deal with the roof at the National Council of Provinces as subsequent phased work that speaks to asset management of parliament. So we now have full teams that have been appointed, ladies and gentlemen, that speaks to all of this work. So as we usher in today, as launched by the presiding officers, this is May up until end of August, is what we call clearance work. Whatever is partially demolished must then be cleared on those areas that this contractor outside will be busy with, and we envisage that by end of August, that work must be completed. What will emerge on the new designs? What are the contending tensions to look at from the old assembly and the new assembly? So design teams have to play with a number of concepts which today they will be unveiling to speak of imagination of a post-apartheid parliament. What must it look like? What are the factors that inform it? In a context of a country whose aspirational statement speaks to diversity, a tapestry of rich cultures and traditions that define who we are as a new nation. How do you infuse that in a design? So we're to give them those challenges to go and think deeply about what a parliament built in 2024 to 2026 should remain as a standing symbol for the next 300 years or 500 years for that matter. And that's not an easy work to start thinking about. So we would now see what is emerging on those perspectives so that you have a guided tour of the perspectives that you could write about, but also sensitize the rest of society. What is the meaning of gathering inputs to build a parliament that truly embodies the aspirational statements in our preamble in the Constitution that speaks to we, the people, united in our diversity, strive for this and this and this and this. How will that parliament embody all those values? Is the challenge that parliament has placed to the creative people to immerse themselves around that. And I would like to invite the technical team, Simon, to start sharing those perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, SDP, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just go through an overview, and I'll invite Brian as the structural engineer to outline the conditions of the building as we found them and get into the details on the logic behind the demolition work that is going to happen. And Nadia, as the chief architect for the National Assembly, will also take us through the design concepts on the building. Just to note that, as the SDP said, that we work in an environment that has legal dictates that we need to follow. And one of the critical elements was to go through a gateway review process. And that process meant that of all the concepts that the stakeholders approved, we had to take them through to a concept and viability assessment and the independent gateway review process, the outcome of which actually meant that those designs were the least cost designs and viable for us to be able to implement. And of course, the SDP spoke about the permit application, Section 27, as a requirement. But what is of importance is the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. And that act actually looks at ensuring that basic services and parliament or government functions optimally. So of what we have seen as assets that have been gutted, we have an obligation to repair them. And the conditions under which we have to conduct our work should be different from the normal implementation of projects. So when people look at the timelines that we are going to put together in terms of construction and the approvals that we require from the statutory bodies, that those should be fast-tracked. It is on the basis of this particular act, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, because it says that as Parliament being a critical infrastructure, we cannot go through the normal processes of approval. From a special arrangements that the SDP spoke about, we work within constraints as well. We don't have enough space. We work within a national key point. There's also heritage issues that we have to be mindful of. And of course, the issue of budget is another element that we need to deal with. So the designers were contending with all those constraints and trying to fit in everything within those parameters that were outlined. And of course, it actually made a limitation in terms of various inputs that we could have accepted in terms of design concepts. But we're going to allow the public to make a contribution on the principles that need to be followed. Because obviously, working within these constraints, you can only take so much. But of course, in terms of the principles, those principles will be accepted or included. So our key focus is to ensure that the outcomes of these buildings will comply with the national building regulations, that will have optimal utility in terms of the spaces, and that the well-being of members will be taken care of. And so items like the gym will also be part of the deliverables, a sauna, and that is consistent with our strategy of ensuring that we engender professionalism in Parliament, and that members, when they engage through lengthy processes of debates in committees, that they should also be given a space for them to refresh or to recover. And of course, Nadia is going to talk about spatial justice, which is a critical issue in contemporary design. So today we were handing over the site to the contractor, and that handover essentially meant that there's an early enabling works that the contractor has to start with, which obviously will start with the erecting of the hoarding. So what we're announcing that Parliament is going to be affected in terms of its operations. The hoarding lines are going to run in different areas in Parliament, meaning that there are certain zones that are going to be restricted, and announcements will be made accordingly. So the same contractor that was handed over will start with that work. Of course, temporary accommodation needs to be established, but the most critical element would be demolition of the fire affected areas of the building in being consistent with the heritage provisions. Maybe just to mention that. So as I mentioned, the operations of Parliament will be affected, but we have looked at provisions of the health and safety, and we went through different engagement with stakeholders to look at the health and safety and the risk associated with the construction. So now I'll call upon Brian to run through the structural elements relating to the condition of the building and also the approach that we're going to take in terms of the demolition. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Simon. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brian Richardson, the structural engineer appointed for the new assembly project. I'm going to take you through a few photographs and try and keep the words down to what's necessary. The first slide shows an aerial view showing the damage largely to the central portion of the new assembly, and in the background there you see the old assembly building where the roof was gone completely. And that's really indicative of the damage that's done inside the building, where damage on new assembly was confined to the central part of the building. Next, please. Where have I got it here? Thank you. Here we go. Okay, thank you. That is on one of the upper floors of the building, and you will see the large cracks in the walls, 50, 60 millimeters wide. Not that the wall itself was damaged by heat. You see little sign of heat on that wall, but the floor below it very severely damaged. And the movement in the floor has precipitated those movements in the walls. A closer view of the roof damage to the right. All the structural steel elements on that roof are lost, far too badly damaged and deformed for reuse. The coffered slabs, some people call them waffle slabs, whatever you're familiar with. It's a reinforced concrete framed building, the new assembly, and those coffered slabs have the reinforcement all visible. All the concrete surrounding that reinforcement has come away as a result of the heat generated by the fire, and you will see damage to the column as well. A closer view of another section of waffle slab, and in this particular one, look at the point of the big red arrow, and there you will see a horizontal line which runs across the screen. In that coffered slab, the coffer has delaminated from the balance of the slab. So it's no longer functioning as a beam. That part of the slab is hanging in catenary, we call it, unable to stand up other than like a piece of string held at one side of the building and draping to the next. So it's unable to fulfill its function, and it is beyond economic repair. This photograph is to show you what we call the transfer beams over the assembly chamber in the new assembly. These are big reinforced concrete beams which actually have a number of post-tension cables in them, which are highly stressed, which carry the floors above. So there are number of office floors, and I'll show you a section through the building just now, office and meeting room floors above the chamber, and the loads of those all came down onto these big transfer beams, 4 of them which spanned across the chamber and were subjected to enormous heat. So the damage to the central portion of the building we determined was too severe to repair economically. The structural damage on the east and west sections of the building was moderate, and we deemed there that the economic structural repairs are in fact possible. We note too that the original design, this building 1986 design time, is no longer compliant with the seismic design codes that we design buildings to in Cape Town. It was compliant at that time, but no longer. And for that reason, we are retrofitting structure to enable this building to be compliant with the latest building codes applicable in Cape Town in terms of seismic design. And the layout of the building, in fact, on the older portions of the building which we're retaining, those portions we are able to introduce and retrofit structure to make them compliant. With the demolition of those severely damaged central portions, space then becomes provided for an enlarged assembly chamber and other necessary facilities. The demolition also will entail the removal of the southern facade to allow the new building to have a larger footprint. And throughout the process, the remaining slabs will be propped, and as slabs which are being demolished will also be propped to allow them to be demolished safely. I talked about the post-tensioned beams. Let's just show you a few pictures of those. So that's a section through the building as it currently is. At level 4, you will see the post-tension beams which span across the space, and in fact a chamber above it, and then a wall acting as a beam, and there's a large collection of beams and slabs all coming down and transferring their load across the assembly chamber. Those two apparent columns not coloured in the middle of the chamber are in fact temporary tiebacks that we use to hold that beam down so that it doesn't deflect too far upwards as the load is taken off it from the top in a staged demolition process. Sorry, went too far back. Yeah, got it. And this is my last slide. This slide shows that slab over the current assembly chamber. The red zones are those badly damaged coffers. The purple zones are the 4 transfer beams, and surrounding it, the green zones where structural repairs are in fact feasible. And this is a video that's been put together which just shows you the demolition process, a view of the building, and showing the slabs that come out. I push enter again. Yeah, there we go. And that's this removal of the central portion. And that's what you're left with to allow the new construction to take place. Thank you. Hand over to Nadia now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nadia Tromp. I'm the principal architect on the National Assembly from Insika Architects. So I will take you through our thinking around the redevelopment of our new parliament. And we started by reimagining this post-democratic parliament. The STP spoke about the values of the preambles of our constitution, and that's really been the basis for the design. How does the project then embody the values of our constitution? So we started with the idea of thinking around a meeting under a tree, or lechotla, and you know, one thinks about this in terms of a cultural act, but it also embodies to a certain degree an authority. And how do we start hearing different voices within our diverse society that we have? From a conceptual point of view, Brian spoke about the areas that need to be demolished that were too badly damaged by the fire. And so these conceptual, just quick sketches kind of shows what will remain after the demolition has been done. So the U that you see on the outside of the U that is indicated shows the existing structure that will remain, and in between that, we have this core that has to be demolished. And so the idea began to think about how could the chamber fit within that space that will be left after all the demolition has been done? Can we provide a chamber that is that will be able to seat more people than what currently was? The previous design having 400 people, and looking to accommodate 600 people in the chamber. So when one thinks about social and spatial justice, that's really the lens that we use to look at the project, and for us that meant inclusivity and equity, and creating the space for the melting pot of South Africa that we have, the common person on the street. How do people start interacting with Parliament and the daily functions of Parliament, and how does it become authentically and truly a participatory Parliament? So the image on the right just is the beginning of the thoughts that we had around lifting the actual Parliament chamber up onto the first floor and creating a space on the ground floor that is really accessible to public and creates that opportunity for interactions to happen. This image just shows some design thinking and exploration that we did in terms of African architecture, and looking really at the spatial arrangements within that. So not architecture as a form, but rather the spaces in between. So we started with the national symbol of the yellowwood tree, tying back again to the idea of Lekgotla. And in this sketch, you can see on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, we've got a courtyard. That current courtyard is the link between the previous old assembly and the previous new assembly building. So the idea of taking the symbolism into that courtyard, the national yellowwood tree, and then bringing that space through the building, creating a platform for public interaction on the ground floor. And this we feel is a very important gesture to make. The previous building was very inward looking, and there's an opportunity to create a building that is really that's more reflective of our society as it is, and that really talks to our constitution and tries to embody that in a physical way. So by lifting the chamber up, there's a space on the ground floor for people to interact with the building itself, but also to be able to link back to any discussions that may be happening in the committee rooms. It will all be the ICT into the building will all be advanced, so people will be able to, visitors in the center would be able to see what's happening in different committee rooms, and if they decide there's a discussion happening that they would like to participate in, there's that opportunity to do that. Also, we've created on various levels viewing platforms for people, for the visitor to be grounded in the space, but also in the city. Because, as I mentioned, the previous building was really inward looking. You really didn't have any mark or indication that you were in this city, in Cape Town, and that there was a mountain out there, or that the gardens were out there, or that Teenhuis was out there, where our president sits. So in doing so, we have a viewing platform on the level of the roof of the chamber as well. And within that level, it's not only a viewing deck out, but again, it's the opportunity for the visitor to participate, even if it is only visually, with seeing what's happening within the chamber. So there are various aspects within the space where the visitor or the viewer would be able to participate with the happenings within Parliament. This is just a quick sketch that again talks around the idea of materiality, of how we actually make the spaces inside this building, and tying back to kind of cultural ways of making and of materialism. So this section is a very good descriptive section of how the spaces would function. You see the courtyard between the previous old assembly and the new assembly on the right-hand side. The idea of daylighting or opening up the basement level with the ground level. So the basement level and the ground level becomes a public interactive space. We have an amphitheater space, and again, looking at the idea of Lechotla or meeting under the tree, that this is a space where the everyday person can have a voice. And again, interact with what's happening within the daily workings of the core business of Parliament. Then under the chamber, we've located, and this really talks to the memory of the National Assembly or the post-apartheid democratic parliament. What we've done is indicated a point or pinpointed the space in time where Mandela was where he sat within the chamber when he was elected as our first democratic president. And so this is really a symbolic, it's a symbolism to that memory of space in time. So the chamber, although it cannot sit on the ground floor as it previously was, and we are lifting it up, we've tried to keep that memory alive. So when visitors come, they can see the place, they can where Mandela sat at that point in time, and there will be a narrative that that will be attached to that in terms of what the visitor sees, what he reads. So bringing art into it, that there may be an artwork on the floor that tells this history to a visitor. And thinking about not only international visitors, but our school kids that may want to visit Parliament and can also be in this new space, which is really state of the art or forward thinking, but always linking back to our heritage and where we come from. This is just another image of that gallery space. And then to talk a little bit around what we will accommodate within the building. We have a members' lounge on the top floor, and then a banqueting hall. You see the viewing deck on the banqueting hall level, which is the top, the roof area above the chamber. Then we're able to accommodate 720 people in the two galleries, each one sitting 360 people. And the assembly chamber will now be able to seat on the main floor 600 people. The public interface is on the ground level. On the right-hand side, these notes actually apply to the U section of the building, which will remain, and that is where all the workings of Parliament will happen, where all the offices will be, and also meeting rooms. So we've structured them into zones across the floors, and through this process, we've managed to double the amount of meeting or committee rooms that were previously there, while still accommodating all of the offices required. This just gives you an idea of the spatial arrangement within the chamber, now seating 600 people, with some views out to the mountain. And then looking back from the speakers table, you see the two galleries and the main floor. This layout just indicates the additional committee rooms that we've managed to add. So you will note there are quite a few big meeting room areas within this floor plate, which previously was a challenge. Then we've identified a location for a daycare center. The Gardener's Cottage has been identified for that, and this will be a daycare that can be used by all parliamentarians. And we've taken special care to think about the kind of new staff that may be coming into Parliament, and realize that the demographic is changing. As our country is changing, there are much younger people coming into Parliament, and also of the childbearing age. And the previous building really didn't consider women in the design. And so how do we make this building more equitable for all? So we have a mother's room, but it should actually say parents' room, a parents' room. And we have a number of them across the floor. Also a space for nursing babies or feeding babies. Then this is just an overview of our new Parliament, which is on this image. You see to the right of it the previous old Assembly, and then going through to the National Assembly. And I think on this image, which it's what's important to note is that we've thought or reimagined the way one would enter this building on the style plane side of the building. And you will notice that there's a new reflection pond that we've indicated at the entrance. And this is quite a symbolic gesture in terms of it, where we have taken note of the existing water running under the building, or the existing river under Parliament. I mean, it runs under a lot of Cape Town, but it does run under our building as well. And so really thinking around how do we bring this water to the ground level where it becomes more interactive. And you know, it's symbolic as through the passage of time, linking us back to our history or our heritage, being current within this space, and then taking us into the future. So symbolically, the president would, or visitors would cross a bridge over this water into the building. This is just another view from the company garden side. We've proposed, we will have an entrance onto the Government Avenue. And again, this is really talking about accessibility. How does the ordinary person on the street start interacting more with our Parliament, and how does it become authentically transformative? And then these are just some quick images that we've done of the chamber. You can see in this image the chamber is hidden among the trees, but has a presence. Also the entrance off Government Avenue. And then this is Parliament Street, looking from the previous old Assembly with a new entrance off that off the street, and the National Assembly in the background. And then creating the opportunity for a new forecourt within style plane, and a new symbolism of that space, reflective of our new democratic South Africa. This is just an image from the garden side. To talk a little bit about the cladding of the building. So it may look like an interesting design, but just to kind of explain a little bit what the fins actually are. So the chamber as it is, I've mentioned previously about connecting back to where we are in the country and in the city. And the fins, or the design of the cladding of this, is data-driven. So they've been articulated to deal with sun in a particular way while being cognizant of views, etc. And then this is just a view looking up Government Avenue, with the new entrance on the previous old Assembly building. Okay, and then this is just a short video. Simon. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, so this just shows a little bit of the new interior design, which is able to accommodate 600 people comfortably within that space, as well as the 2 gallery spaces. Oh.
I think it's the size.
Oh, okay. So we shall leave that. Okay. Okay, I will now hand over to Simon. I'm sorry the video is not playing, but I'm sure they'll have it on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Colleagues, apologies for that. I think because we're running on the Zoom platform, so the video is actually not connecting. But thanks, Nadia, for that. In respect of the timelines, we explained that this work that we did previously from 2023 on the enabling works, but in respect of now the main work on the restoration of the Old Assembly and the National Assembly, we completed stage 1 and stage 2. And stage 2 is the most important stage in construction. In every project management school, they emphasize that stage, and the last stage being stage 7, as the most important, because this is where you make critical decisions to decide whether you go ahead with the project or whether you can the project, or to determine whether the project is viable for you to be able to continue. And we spent extensive time on stage 2 because stakeholders needed many requirements or had many requirements. The design concepts had to be workshopped, and they went through multi-party forum, political party forums. We workshopped those adequately so that there was buy-in from different people. And we did get an approval from the multi-party forum on the design concepts that Nadia was talking about. So in respect of the design, the National Assembly team completed the design on stage 3, the detailed design. And of course, the Old Assembly team is slightly running behind based on the issue that the building is historical, it's old, and the as-built drawings that we were looking for was a challenge to engage DPWI on. And therefore, that actually created a constraint. But again, that should not create a problem, because the demolition contractor, as we handed over the site to him, will be working. And by end of May, the Old Assembly team will be complete with their designs. In respect of stage 4, we have appointed the contractor as we indicated. And for the main works, the DBSA pre-qualified 6 grade 9 contractors who are now ready, waiting for the designs to be completed and even the costing. And once we have gone through stage 4 in August, those main contractors will start the work. In respect of stage 5, which is the execution of the main works or construction, the contractor that we're handing over the site today will complete the work at the end of August, and immediately the new contractor will take over in terms of construction. So we were working under tight deadlines on the basis that, as I indicated, that this is a critical asset and the core business of Parliament has to continue. So the completion of this work, we still sticking to the deadline that the STP gave us of November 2025. But of course, we understand that there's ICT work that still needs to come in at the tail end, and that's why we have the 28th of February 2026, which will allow us time to commission the ICT equipment once the main construction work has completed. ICT in its own, you know that it requires commissioning and testing, and those teething problems we've allowed into the timelines, and hence we say construction will complete on the 28th of February 2026. In respect of the practical completion, we will allow the defects liability period, which will take us to that practical completion stage. Beyond that, we have to close out the project because, as I indicated, that the 2 important stages in construction is stage 2 and stage 7. Stage 2, you have to get through the viability and make measured investment decisions. On stage 7, if you've completed your work and don't close the project, you expose government or your investor into a liability. And quite often we have projects that actually just live forever and not being closed out, and which creates a problem in terms of financial risk to the investor or to the owner of the building. So that will be concluded in July 2026, and it's an administrative process. It is not anything to do with construction. As I indicated, that you have to ensure that the financial commitments are closed out administratively. You close out reports, as-built drawings are prepared, and then that the asset register is also updated and sent over to the Department of Public Works for them to put the project on, or the assets on their books. So in terms of cost estimates, the SCP indicated that we were given an appropriation of 2 billion, and that was on the basis that it was an appropriation. And it was always understood that the definition of the scope and also the timelines will actually give more definitive data for us to arrive at the outcomes. So that led us to a revision of 2.1 billion in terms of the main construction work or the main builder's work. So all the work that we're doing will come up to 2.1 billion. Further to that, obviously there's a request or requirement for ICT modernization, and that also includes replacement of broadcasting equipment that was bent down, and of course coming up to the state-of-the-art broadcasting studio, audio-visual in all the boardrooms, including replacement of the data center and data networks. And that comes to 943 million. And of course, the main cost drivers are the chamber conferencing system, the data center, and the broadcasting system. People that are here are sure they understand that broadcasting equipment is quite expensive, and it's the sheer volume of the equipment that we're going to install in each and every boardroom and committee room that push the costs, as we explained. So in terms of the concluding remarks, we want the media and the members of the public to note the progress and also the design concepts, and take opportunity to reflect on the symbols of transformation in terms of the reshaping the country's future, and further to engage on the website that we're going to launch in terms of the ideas and also how you can engage in terms of the process. The website is managed by our public. So I see that we have the challenge in terms of the Zoom connection. I don't know how we. Okay, we wanted to demonstrate the website live. Mr. Mtapo, that's your area, because it's actually running on my screen here, but it's not projecting on the Zoom platform. It's sharing.
Stop sharing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, the STP. Thank you, Mr. Mashiro, the technical team, for the presentations on various aspects of this business of construction of parliament. The website is there. So as we know that public participation, involvement, and transparency are the lifeblood of a democratic parliament. So through this website, we're encouraging the members of the public to make inputs in terms of the kind of parliament that they want. As you can see from the images that we are building a parliament of the future, but this parliament belongs to the people. They must be the one that take the lead in terms of the kind of parliament that they want. And so we've got a WhatsApp chatbot. You'll see that there is a Have Your Say, where there is a form that the members of the public can use to make inputs. But it contains a lot of information, including the timeline, showing the work that has been happening since the fire up to now. All this information that was shared today, it is captured there. So it is quite a lot of information, very useful information that the members of the public can use, and you are invited to ensure that you visit that website and you familiarize yourself in between these kind of sessions that are ongoing for the next, between now and the completion of this important project. Thank you very much. I know that it is quite a detailed, very packed information, but it was necessary that we share it with you. Thank you very much for all the presentations. I'm going to now open the for any questions for clarity from members of the media. I don't see any hand. I think that is Ibra. Any other hand? Yes, yeah, I see. Yeah, yeah, okay, sure. So, those two hands, just use the roving mic. Yeah.
Okay, this question is self-serving. I see you putting us in the basement. Will we still have access to the house?
What is happening with the basement?
Us. We there, the media.
In the basement?
Yes. They're at the bottom.
Okay. I think there is a media gallery in the new. I personally fought for you so that you can be accommodated there. I will never hide you. Somewhere in the basement. So you'll have a very nice location there. Any other questions?
So it's Aisha Ismail from ENCA. Seeing that the focus is on building a truly people's parliament and a parliament of the future, will the statue of Louis Botha still stand?
Yeah. Okay. Those are the two questions. Is there any other question? Because after this, we are going to close and then go to the conclude here and go to the inside of the building.
Thank you, Moloto. Jason Felix, News 24. I just wanted to check the cost. The last briefing where the cost increased about R1 billion. I think it was 943 million rand increase. This time around, has there been any cost increase? Is it safe to say that the project will cost around 3.something billion rand, 3.3 billion rand, and it will definitely be completed by the 28th of February 2026? Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I think those are the three questions, and then after this, I think we can close here. Just switch off the mic. The STP. Three questions. You are putting the media hiding them in the gallery, and then secondly, you are condoning the statue of Botha outside there. What are you going to do about it? And then, what was the third one? The cost, yes.
No, thank you very much, Program Director. So why are we located in the dungeon under? I think you have been clear that, Abra, you will see a state-of-the-art media center in that new parliament. And I'm sure you'll be very proud of once you see it. All other considerations will take into account space availability, what are the issues to balance, so that reporting on activities of Parliament is smoothly managed. So as those details emerge, they will be shared with yourselves. The issue of the cost, I think we did indicate much earlier, and we have been very consistent on it, not today. You would have seen the slide that talks about appropriation. So I mentioned 27 of October 2022 as a medium-term statement, policy statement of the minister, wherein in February 2023, that allocation of 2 billion rand was confirmed. And that allocation is called appropriation, to allow us to do the work, to restore, to work on the offices. And it has always been understood and said consistently by Parliament. The main cost driver will be fully determined by the final contract award. Simon mentioned about 9 contractors now who will take this design work and quote on it. What will it cost to actually do this? It may well be 2 billion, it may be 2.1, whatever the cost is. I don't want to start anticipating, but we all know in construction, the main contractor will then cost, and on a competitiveness, they will then award. And those are the issues. So the determination of 943 million rand for ICT broadcasting speaks to what we would need to dress up the institution on ICT matters, not only to cover SONA, but committee rooms, plenary sessions, and all of those. You need capacity to do that. You would have seen what we do now that we're operating on an extended precinct like City Hall. The cost higher per day for a sitting of SONA, the cost higher per day sitting between SONA this week and budget speech next week, and remaining on site on all of those. Those are huge cost drivers. And sadly, Parliament lost a recent infrastructure that it installed before the fire. It modernized all its facilities before the fire, and all of that was lost. So dressing up that facility is not a small measure to be able to respond to all communication imperative, run issues of multimedia and YouTube's live sites, and all of those things that are required. So we will be constant with you, updating you. Even when the contractor is awarded, we will say this contractor is appointed at this cost, which we can't speculate with you now. It will be. The issue of the statues, we did mention managing 2 tensions: historical artifacts that are there, symbols of the past transcending with the present, and symbols of the present, meaning 1994, a democratic parliament, that the symbolism of this one must speak to. So all of those things are not easy issue to say this statue will be removed. They are all guided by heritage legislation. So if they were to be moved, you would get special permits to guide you where it must be placed, for what reason. Nothing will be simply like demolish this. Because if it defines a certain era, where will that be found at a particular time? And we have seen that many institutions that have been rebuilt would always preserve and put them in their right places. We can't speculate now where it will be. You would have seen an image of Nelson Mandela that was outlined there. Where will that be? In the reception front of the offices. There's currently a bust. So if there's a proposition to put a statue of a first democratic president that addressed the House, what is the symbolism of that in terms of unity and other areas? That's what the design team has been asked to think deeply around. And they will continue to engage us around that matter. But we are guided by heritage legislation on any matter that will decide where Parliament would manage any of the historical symbols that it has. Thank you very much.
So definitely the media will have, from that gallery, a very good vantage point. So you don't have to worry, Ibra. Thank you very much. I think we have now come to the end of our engagement. I'm going to thank the presiding officers, and we still have the chairperson of the NCOP who remained throughout. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, STP. Thank you, Simon and the technical team that are involved in the project. Let me recognize Honorable Swart. You are welcome. Thank you very much. I know that you are covering us and this project in prayer. And that's why this engagement has been very blessed. Thank you very much. So we've got protective gear for those members of the media who will be, or anyone else who is going inside. I'm not sure how many. Can I just see by show of hand? Yeah, by show of hand, how many are interested in going in? Okay, yeah. So, all right, and the photographers as well. So just make sure that you have got one of these for that tour, and there are technical members of the technical team that will guide you and make sure that you don't stray into very dangerous red zones. Thank you very much. The briefing is adjourned.